Welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday, beautiful people out there. Welcome to another episode of People Always Ask. And this one is for the helpers in particular. We're talking about compassion fatigue. If you never heard of it before, it's basically when you've been taking care of people so much that you start to get exhausted emotionally and it gets hard to actually have compassion. And so it's happened to me. It's probably happened to you if you're a teacher in the healthcare system, and you might be on the verge of it right now in the middle of the pandemic, even if you're just a caregiver in your home. So today we have someone very special with us. Her name is Natasha, and forgive me, I should have cleared this up before we even went live. D'Arcangelo, is that? And she is a okay. Say it again so people can hear you.
D'Arcangelo.
D'Arcangelo. Oh, that's even better than I thought. D'Arcangelo, who is a certified compassion fatigue professional. And so she works with this all the time, does presentations on this all of the time. So she's going to hopefully help us out. And now I was just talking to you a little bit about what you do. And now you've been online with the rest of us the whole pandemic.
Yep, for a year now. I can't believe it. It was a year for me on March 16th. That was my last day, or my first day rather, doing telehealth. So I remember we were shutting down for 2 weeks, and then while our 2 week shutdown was going on, the state shut down for a month, and then here I am a year and change later.
Well, for you, I can imagine that even within just doing therapy, there's some people who are getting burnt out, who are going through some compassion fatigue right now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are working from home right now. A lot of people are kind of doing their job virtually some sort of way.
Yeah.
What are some of the warning signs? Like, how would you know if you were like in a bad way during this pandemic and you got to start taking some control?
Yeah. So there's a few big ones. So first of all, compassion fatigue mostly affects those of us that are in the caring professions. So I'm talking about my nurses, my doctors, my veterinarians, my mental health workers, teachers, like those of us that take care of others. They're the ones that are going to be struggling with compassion fatigue. And the most widely accepted definition of compassion fatigue in the field was developed by Charles Figley, and he described it as a combination of secondary traumatic stress and burnout. When you put those two things together, then you get compassion fatigue. And
sorry, go ahead. Because secondary traumatic stress.
Yes. So secondary traumatic stress is what we experience as mental health workers. So sorry, you guys are going to hear the cat. So that is what we experience when we are hearing these stories. So my mental health professionals, I'm looking at you, right? Because a lot of us every day sit in these sessions and we're hearing stories about things that our clients have gone through, right? Doctors see this a lot as well. They come to you in the emergency room and you're seeing all of this stuff happening right in front of you. So secondary traumatic stress is when you are hearing all of this and you end up kind of taking in the trauma yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And what they found was when they interview therapists who do trauma work and they compare it to like the symptoms, they compare the symptoms to people that are actually survivors of sexual assault or combat veterans, they can't tell the difference clinically between what the therapists are presenting with and what the survivors of trauma are presenting with. So that's a warning sign.
You're essentially just hearing about the trauma, and because you are aware of the trauma, you're traumatized.
You're taking it in. Exactly. And think about those of us that end up in the helping fields. We do it because we want to help others. And many times that comes from a place of something that we've experienced, right? So like our substance abuse professionals oftentimes are in recovery themselves, had somebody that was really impactful when they were in recovery and are now trying to give back, right? Which is a great thing. But we also have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we end up, number one, maybe causing harm to those that we're trying to help. But number two, we're doing a really big disservice to ourselves. You can't keep doing this work if you're not taking care of you. the American Counseling Association has declared April to be Counseling Awareness Month. And their hashtag this year is Burn Bright, Not Out, because therapists have also gone through the pandemic too. And for all of us, we're not used to, I'm sure same is true for you, we're not used to going through the exact same traumatic experience as our clients at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So I've experienced grief. I know what it is to relate to my clients on that level. I've been through grief myself. But I'm, for the first time, finding myself going through this grieving experience of what my life used to be before COVID. And so it's been a lot of processing almost at the same time as my clients, which has been a really new experience for me and for a lot of therapists. So we didn't learn in graduate school how to do mental health work through a pandemic. There was no class in that in social work school or in mental health counseling school.
I mean, it's because I worked with teachers and I work with some folks who are in nursing homes and some people who are in domestic violence work and things of that nature. And everything has been affected by the pandemic. And one of the things that I'm sitting here and listening to is I'm wondering how many people who are helpers have a hard time admitting that they're struggling through this.
I would say 99%.
Because I'm like, how hard is it to give advice when you're not even sure how you're really handling it, if you're really checked in and doing a good job?
Absolutely. And then the other thing is too, because we want to help, what we oftentimes will do is we put our stuff aside, right? I don't have time to deal with my own stuff because I need to take care of other people, right? So I've seen a lot of articles on like the APA website, the American Mental Health Counseling Association, about how people are having a hard time finding a therapist right now, and waiting lists are really long, and it's because there's been so much of a demand. And like I, for one, I count myself one of them. I feel bad saying no. So, I'll squeeze somebody else in on a Friday, or I'll agree to stay later. Like today, I agreed to stay later today to fit in another client. And it's because we know that there's a need and we feel bad saying no. Same thing is happening with nurses. They feel so guilty when they're working these 12-hour shifts. And it's like, but if I call in sick or if I can't show up for my next shift, what happens to my coworkers, right? That's the kind of thing that's happening. And the problem is you're burning yourself out. There's only so much you can do. Like, I know you want to help, but you're only one person. And if you're in the caring field, one of the realities of doing what we do is we just can't help everybody. You can't set that as your life goal. Because you're going to set yourself up for failure. And the best way that you can take care of other people is to make sure that you're taking care of you. You have to take care of you. Otherwise, you can't keep doing what you're doing.
Well, you said something so important, which is that a lot of people who get into this, right, in the first place, we're kind of in it because we just are this sort of natural, busy, help kind of person. Mm-hmm. That makes it hard to notice where the line should be, I would imagine sometimes.
Absolutely.
How do you check yourself? Like, it's always going to be a good idea to help people in the hospital. It's always going to be a good idea to show up to school to help the students. Like, how do you rein yourself in? Mm-hmm. And where do you even draw the line?
So I want you to become familiar with the word no.
Okay, now.
Yeah, you have to be able to say no. You have to. And I literally practice this in session with my clients. Like, it's okay for you to say no. It's okay for you to put boundaries in place. And it's not even something that you have to make excuses for, right? Mm-hmm. Again, if you cannot take care of you, you cannot keep doing this work. And that means that you have to put boundaries in place. You have to be able to say no, because again, you're not responsible for everybody. It's the airplane analogy, right? If the oxygen mask drops from the ceiling, you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you help anybody that's with you. This is the same thing. If you want to keep helping people, you have to take care of you. What is the use of you showing up to your nursing shift after you've just done 4 12-hour shifts? You're going to be dead on your feet. Who are you helping in that case, right? The same thing with my therapist. If you're trying to see, I don't know, like 40 clients a week, I can't imagine doing that, but if you're trying to see 40 clients a week, who are you helping? You're just exhausting yourself, right? And the other thing that I think that's really important that we tend to forget when we're caregivers is, what are our signs of when we are heading into that burnout space? So if you're not sleeping well, if you're noticing changes in your appetite, if you're finding that you're unable to concentrate, if you're really irritable about like the little things, like, I don't know, somebody left a mug in the sink overnight and all of a sudden you're like screaming at your kids like it's the end of the world. I mean, these are some of the warning signs. If you don't feel like you, then that's something that you need to get checked out, right? It also helps if you have an accountability partner, not your romantic partner, an accountability partner. So maybe one of your good friends, and say, hey, I've been doing some research and I learned about this thing called compassion fatigue. Because I'm a caregiver, I am more likely to develop compassion fatigue. Here are the symptoms of compassion fatigue. If you see me doing this stuff, I give you permission here and now to call me out on it and to say, hey, I'm worried about you. I'm noticing this stuff going on, right? You have to have somebody that's going to see it, because we're going to go to the defensive place. What are you talking? No, I'm fine. What are you talking about? Don't come at me with that, right? Because we want to keep going. We want to keep helping. And so you need somebody to call you out on that, right? We also have to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So then when they call you out, what do you do to intervene? Like, let's say you're like, okay, got me. Like, I'm in a bad place. You got to go back to work eventually. And I've heard a lot of people take time off and they're like, I don't feel rested, or I don't really feel better. I was thinking about work the whole time. What are you, in the interim, what are you supposed to do?
So there's a couple of really quick things that you can do. And what I learned through my training, so when I became a compassion fatigue professional, it's very, very quick stuff that you can do in the moment to help you get back to a centered place. So one thing that I would encourage you to think about is becoming familiar with your own ACEs. So if you're not familiar with that, it stands for the Adverse Childhood Experiences. And that is one of the most widely researched tools in our field. And it addresses 10 different areas of trauma that people could have experienced before the age of 18. When we take a look at caregivers, very often our ACEs score tend to be higher than the general population. Again, that's kind of what drives us into this field, right? So if your ACEs score is higher, your brain is more pre-wired to react to situations as though you're in life-threatening danger when you're really not. So take, for example, if somebody leaves a mug in the sink overnight. Logically and rationally, you know that that is not a life-threatening danger. But your brain is so wired from your previous traumatic experiences to go into panic, fight, or flight mode that you start going into panic, fight, or flight mode, even with something as simple as that mug in the sink, right? So it's important that you know your ACEs score so that you kind of have a baseline for what you're working with. And you also should know that if you're working with other people who have experienced trauma, oftentimes we tend to think that if we have a history of trauma, and I hear this from clients at least once a day, that it makes them broken or that it makes them defective. And that's not true. If you have an ACEs score, I mean, I have some clients whose ACEs score are like 9 or 10. They hit every single one of those things. And it's things like previous physical abuse, neglect, previous sexual abuse, living with somebody that was suffering from a mental illness or from substance abuse, having somebody in the household that went to prison, right? It's pretty heavy stuff. And we oftentimes,
just so
sorry,
folks
go ahead.
know, if you have an ACEs score that's over 4, the reason that this was actually developed is because of physical health outcomes. It's not even about mental health outcomes. It was about obesity and exposure to, and now there's so many studies on things, chronic diabetes, blood pressure.
High blood pressure, yep.
Right, heart-related issues, all sorts of stuff. So really what they're saying
asthma.
So you're saying you're working with people who have 10, and they're saying that if you have more than 4, you're likely to already be dying early, have negative health outcomes, have more negative mental health outcomes in the first place.
Correct.
And people are in the helping profession, which actually matches up with the statistic I've heard on nurses actually being one of the most obese professions. That is so, which is so counterintuitive, because you wouldn't think a healthcare professional would end up being in a profession where your weight would end up being so disproportionately an issue. But that's why I just wanted to let people know, because I'm like, if 4 makes you predisposed to things and everything after that.
Imagine what 10 does.
Right.
Yeah. If you have an ACEs score of 6 or higher, on average, there's about a 20-year difference in life expectancy.
Sheesh.
Yes.
20 years?
20 years. 20 years. If you have time, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who's a pediatrician in California, she did an amazing TED Talk, about 16 minutes long, widely available on YouTube. Highly recommend. She's really outstanding. But the good news is that because we know this stuff, it doesn't have to predetermine the course of your universe. And this is where a lot of my clients get stuck. They feel like because they've got this ACEs score, well, that's it. I'm just going to be traumatized for the rest of my life. And that's not true. At the end of the day, your brain is a machine. And if you have an ACEs score of 4 or higher, right? 4 is considered clinically significant. What your brain learned while it was developing is that your universe was not a safe place. And so all too often, your brain had to go into panic, fight, or flight mode to help you stay alive, right? That's how you made it to adulthood. So what's happened at this point is your brain and your nervous system is over adapted to your environment. That's not a bad thing. It just means that you're over adapted. Your brain was just doing its job of trying to keep you alive. So you can't be mad at your brain for that, right? So if we get down to the science of it, you have your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is what takes charge, for example, when you touch a hot stove. You don't think about like, oh, this stove is hot. This feels uncomfortable. I shouldn't be doing this, right? No, you touch a hot stove and your brain is like, don't do that. That's bad. Right. And when we have that higher ACEs score, when we have that history of trauma, we do that a lot of the time. We're in sympathetic dominance, where you have the power to go into parasympathetic dominance. Parasympathetic dominance, that's like your prefrontal cortex. That's your higher thinking. That's where we write poetry from and where we create watercolors from, right? If you can tap into that, then you regain control of your nervous system and your anxiety is not ruling you. It is a very simple thing to do. It's not easy because we're so predisposed to immediately going into panic, fight, or flight. So there's a couple things that you can do to help you very quickly in the moment. The first thing is recognize the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. So one thing that's good to become familiar with is what happens inside your mind and your body when you're stressed. A lot of times when we have a history of trauma, we tend to not spend a lot of time really conscious in our bodies. We just react a lot to our environment. So I want you to think about what happens when you're feeling stressed. A lot of times my heart beats faster and I start breathing faster and maybe I start to get tunnel vision or I feel dizzy. my stomach feels upset. I get a headache. I have a lot of clients that have like really tense jaws, like they have TMJ. I'm not sleeping well. I'm having suicidal thoughts, right? Like those are some really, I have racing thoughts. Those are some really common things. So think about what your stress reactions are, what happens inside your mind and your body when you're stressed. And then think about what the causes of those stress are. A lot of times when I do this with clients, I get, oh, my family and my job and my kids and the bills that I have to pay. COVID is a stressor right now. And I ask them, which one of the things on your list right now in this very moment, which one of those things is currently threatening your life? And I usually get a blank stare.
Wow.
And they're like, well, none of them. I'm like, aha. But what you're doing is you're responding to them as though they are currently threatening your life. So the truth is, those are not the causes of your stress. It's your beliefs about those things that are the causes of your stress. What if we took your job and instead of feeling hopeless about, well, administration's never going to understand and they just want me to keep doing overtime and they're never going to pay me more. What if instead of having that as a concept, you think to yourself, you know what? I'm not happy with administration. And also, this is a perceived threat moment. My life is not currently in danger. I don't need to go into panic, fight, or flight mode right now. You can keep yourself in a state of parasympathetic dominance. You don't have to go into your threat mode. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to be angry at administration or upset or frustrated. All of that doesn't go away. But there's a very big difference between being angry and going into a panic attack and saying to yourself something like, I am safe right now, and I'm pretty angry at what's happening at this staff meeting. Two very different situations. If we keep ourselves in this place of, well, that's just how administration is, and it's never going to change. This is how it's going to be for the rest of my career. You've taken all the power away from you. Yeah. And that's not a really comfortable place to be, right? The other thing to do to help shut down your threat response. So the first thing is recognize, is this a life-threatening danger? Or is this a perceived threat? The truth is 99% of your universe is perceived threat. Unless something in that moment at that time is actually endangering your life, it is perceived threat. I was in a car accident last year and I knew that the car was going to hit me. They lost control. It was raining. It was a whole thing. And I've been doing this stuff so much that my brain literally went, okay, that car is going to hit you. This is now a real threat. And I was able to actually switch over into it. Now, this is not an overnight switch. I have to tell you this. This is something that you have to practice over and over again in all of those little moments. Your child spills orange juice on the kitchen floor. Administration sends out a meeting about how you need to stay late after work. You're stuck in traffic on the way home. Your partner forgot to pick up the eggs, right, when they stopped at the grocery store. All of those multiple moments during the day, we oftentimes will go into a threat response. It's not needed. You don't need to. I promise you. And so the next step is to then relax into your body. If you can relax into your body, you shut down your threat response. And there's a couple of really quick ways to do that. One of them is called the wet noodle. This is what I learned in the training. I didn't name it myself. But I invite you right now to do a body scan. So kind of scan yourself from your head to your toes. And this is part of this body awareness. Go ahead. So
as you walk us through this, I have to plug in my computer. So rather than me sit here and just leave this one side looking weird, I'm gonna center you so you can let people wet noodle with you.
Sounds good.
I want you to kind of let people try.
Sounds good. So what you're going to do is you're going to scan yourself from your head to your toes and just kind of become aware of where you're holding the tension in your body, okay? Most common places that I get are like shoulders or my lower back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count to 5. As I count to 5, I'm going to invite you to just relax all of the muscles in your body. Just kind of soften them, okay? Even if you can get your tension level from a 10 to a 9, that's still an improvement. And I promise you, your skeleton will hold you up. You will not melt into a puddle. Let your skeleton do what it's going to do. You can let your muscles soften, okay? And then we're going to count all the way back up when I'm done. So I'm going to invite you, just soften all the muscles in your body. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now you should be down at your feet, and I'm going to count back up. And again, as you scan your body, anywhere that you notice you're still holding on to tension, go ahead and soften those muscles. So we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Hopefully you noticed at least a little shift, at least a little bit of a letting go of some of that tension. Okay. And I mean, even with the time it took me to talk you through that, that took us less than a minute, right? If you get into the habit of doing that, that won't take you more than 5 seconds. Literally, it's doing a body scan. And that's one of the things that I really like about the skills that I learned in that training is they're so easily usable and accessible. You don't even need to step away. You can be doing the wet noodle when you're in a conversation with somebody and they would have absolutely no idea. Yeah. Do I have time to do the other one? It's a little bit more complicated.
It's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Well, I'm intrigued. We have a question.
Okay. Oh, sure.
We have a question, and then I'm going to have you walk through it.
Okay.
Just so that, because I want to make sure that you get to the question and we get to the whole,
okay,
you get to relax and doing your activity.
Sure.
So the question basically is if you're the partner of a helper, so like if your wife, partner, boyfriend, whatever is in the healthcare industry, they're a helper, they're a caregiver. How can you be supportive if you start to notice, even if it's coming out at you, that they're going through compassion fatigue?
Great question. Thank you so much for asking, Chris. What I would recommend is a couple of things. I would very gently approach said person and say, hey, so I saw this thing called compassion fatigue, and I've been doing a little bit of research on it. And I think that you might check off some of the boxes, and I want to be able to help you with that. I want to be able to help you to get to a better place with that. So, here is a video that I found, or here is a person that I found that, so some of the initials behind my name are CCFP. I'm a certified compassion fatigue professional. So if you look for somebody that has that designation, or honestly, anybody that's had a significant amount of trauma training should also be able to help. Maybe get them connected to, a lot of times the people that do the work that we do are another great resource. So other nurses are going to get it. Other doctors are going to get it. Other mental health professionals are going to get it. I'm based here in Orlando, and we actually have this great organization called Peer Support Space that does a support group specifically for those of us in the helping professions once a month. That's a great thing to connect to, right? I mean, I'm biased, but I think everybody needs a therapist. So, if they're able to, get them connected to a therapist. If they have commercial health insurance, they should have mental health coverage. A lot of the bigger organizations will have an EAP, an employee assistance program, where you can get some sessions for free. It's at least another place to get started. So those are a couple of the big places to get started. The other thing is, and I was just talking to a client about this yesterday, we have to destigmatize seeking mental health care. Have to. You would never tell a friend who came to you and said, I think I broke my bone. What should I do about that? You would never tell a friend to walk it off or to suck it up, right? But when it comes to depression or anxiety or compassion fatigue, all too often we're very dismissive, just, don't feel that way anymore. Just stop being anxious. Just calm down. Ugh.
I know a lot of partners tell their partner to quit their job. How effective do you think that is?
You don't have to do that. So here's the thing. If you quit your job and you go to another job within the same field, the possibility exists that you're going to run into the same frustrations with administration, right? The failures in administration tend to be the same across the board because, I mean, I come from a community mental health background, and the truth is the people making the decisions don't actually know what it's like to work with clients on a day-to-day basis. So how is that ever going to change the environment at work, right? I can't change the administration. What I'm in charge of is how I respond in this situation. So if I'm heading into a staff meeting and I'm thinking, oh, great, another one of these stupid things. These people don't even know what they're talking about. This is a waste of my time. I'm quoting myself here. If I walk into the staff meeting with that kind of energy, I'm going to continue to be miserable and drained, right? If I walk into that staff meeting recognizing it as a perceived threat and in a relaxed body, I'm going to present a completely different way in that staff meeting, right? Yeah. That's where my power is. That's what I have control over. Administration is going to do stupid stuff. That's what they do.
You must look back on the earlier part of your career and have so many things that you would have done differently before you
100%
had access.
100%. Yeah. And you know, the truth is I didn't leave my other job because of the clients. I loved my clients. I do what I do because of my clients, right? But my therapist at the time was telling me that I needed to leave my job. That's what, she's like, you're going to burn out of the field. And if you don't leave your job, that's what's going to happen. And I didn't want to leave my field. I love what I do. And so I left my job, and I didn't have the skills now. I didn't have those skills then that I have now. Now, would I go back and do it differently? Yes. But I feel like having conversations like this, working with healthcare workers, working with other mental health professionals, hopefully somebody hears that message at that point in their career that I didn't get at that point in my career. And they're able to kind of see that they're not you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances. You always have the ability to choose how you react in a situation. You always have the power to be able to do that. And you don't constantly have to spend your life in a state of threat. It's really uncomfortable to do that. Your body is not designed to be sustained in panic, fight, or flight mode. We're literally not built to do that, right? Yeah. If you're on a walk in your neighborhood and you see a bear, yeah, you're going to go into fight or flight mode, right? But you can't sustain flight or fight mode 24/7. And a lot of us, that's what we're doing inside our bodies. And we're not even aware. At some point, it became our normal, Yeah.
And I used to show people the trauma chart and be like, this is your home away from home.
Yes.
Always activated. Now,
absolutely.
This makes me think of the second skill that you wanted to show us to relax into your body. So guide us. I like being removed from it so that I didn't distract people by being weird and doing my part of it over here. So I'm going to let you lead us in the second activity. What is this called?
Okay, so this one is called, we can call it like a pelvic floor relaxation. How about that? Okay, so you're going to find four different points of your anatomy. Okay, I want you to find on the front where your hip bones stick out. There's 2 places in the front where your hip bones stick out. I want you to actually touch them. And then I want you to put your hands under your butt. And you're going to sit on your hands. And you're going to find the 2 places on your bottom where your pelvic bones stick out. Okay. So now you have those 4 points of your body. You've created a touch memory. Imagine, draw with me, a box that connects those 4 dots. Yeah. It's at an angle. So it's at a plane. So you've got that box inside your pelvis. We oftentimes refer to that as our core if you're thinking about like exercise or workout language. There's a lot of muscles inside that box. What I'm going to invite you to do is I'm going to count to 5. And I'm going to invite you to soften or relax the muscles that are inside that box, inside your pelvis. And just notice what happens to the rest of your body as you do that, okay? Reminder again, I promise you your skeleton will hold you up. You will not melt into a puddle on the floor, okay? Think about it this way. Like the consistency of pancake batter, that's what I want you to try to make your butt into. That's what we're aiming for, okay? So I'm going to count to 5, and I'm going to invite you to just soften those muscles. Let them go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Hopefully you noticed, if not a whole body relaxation, at least a decrease in the amount of tension that you were holding on to. Okay. Some people find it more effective to actually think about the muscles that you use if you wanted to stop peeing midstream. Yeah. If you hold on to those muscles, women, we know them as our kegels. Yeah. Try it this way. If you squeeze those for 5 seconds and then you relax them and let that relaxed feeling fill up that whole box that we made, that may feel a little bit more effective for you. So let's try that one too. So I'm going to squeeze for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now relax it. Let it go. And let that relaxed feeling fill up your whole pelvis. Okay. Again, 2 other really super quick things that you can do. If you're in a relaxed body, you're not in threat mode. That is something you always have control over.
Well, I was like, yeah, I know. I'm never sure if I'm doing those things right, but I think that helps.
Yeah.
I feel like now I'm moving around a little.
Yeah, again, and if you get your tension to come down from a 10 to a 9, that's still more relaxed than you were before, right? You're not going to go from a 10 to a 0. This stuff takes practice. It takes time. And especially a lot of my clients that have those higher ACEs scores, me asking them to do this is so uncomfortable. They're like, wait, you want me to let go of my tension, but my tension is my security blanket. I like my tension. And so that's one of the reasons that I like that one, where you actually like deliberately squeeze your Kegel muscles, because sometimes it takes that forcing yourself into tension to release it before you can actually see the difference between them. So that's another really quick thing that you can do. And again, that's another one. You can be doing this in the middle of a conversation, like with your boss, for example, or with your kids if they just spill the orange juice on the floor. And you can get into a relaxed body, and you don't have to go into threat mode where you're that angry, screaming person that you don't want to be, right? Because that's another thing that my clients tell me is, this isn't who I am. This isn't how I want to parent. This isn't how I want to be at work. And it's because you're spending so much time in threat mode. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to. I promise you can be in a relaxed body and you're going to be okay. I promise you. Think about it this way too. Let's say that there was a real threat. My car accident, for example, that was a legitimate real threat. Yeah. I still relaxed into my body. Because imagine if I had gone into that car accident like this.
They say it's more harmful.
I would have caused a lot more damage, right? Yeah. But I was able to relax into my body. So even in those situations where there is a real threat, you still want to be in a relaxed body. You still want your brain to be thinking about what your next step is, right? So really important stuff.
This is why I like body-based work, because I think that a lot of people, they get scared of some of the feelings that kind of come up. But I mean, if you just pay attention to your body here and now, which is all this mindfulness, meditation, New Age stuff is really trying to push on people, is just like, can you pay attention to the fact that there's other ways of knowing that your body isn't this unsafe haven for you all the time, that it actually is giving you, if you just tune into here right now, an opportunity to actually learn what to do, how to survive in this situation, which is, for me, that was difficult to trust, because I was used to trusting my thought process over anything. Even when I was having panic attacks, even when I was really overwhelmed, it was like, that doesn't matter. I'm trying to just make sure I'm doing all this other really important stuff, no matter how it makes me feel. And I think a lot of us, you're right. I don't even think I could see myself well enough to know that that wasn't just functioning. Like that wasn't just the way.
Absolutely. And I, for some people, they need to be doing this 200-300 times a day. I mean, it's happening that much. Threat. And if you combine these skills, like let's say you're even taking 10 seconds to go into a wet noodle, Combined over your day, you're looking at 5 minutes. You can take 5 minutes to
Yeah.
get yourself into a relaxed body. I promise. I promise.
And
And the more that you do it, think about it this way. For however long you've come to this point, your brain has done alarm, panic, attack mode, alarm, panic, attack mode. It's taken you years to get to this point. It's not going to take you a minute to undo it, right? You're essentially teaching your brain a new way of doing things. So be patient with yourself. I promise you, the more that you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And you'd be surprised the amount of changes that people make. I mean, I have clients that are telling me like, you know, I'm not mad at my kids anymore because they spilled the orange juice and I recognize it as a perceived threat. And I was like, all right, go get the paper towels. We'll clean it up. You know, they're parenting the way that they want to parent. I have survivors of sexual assault that one of my clients she went out on a date last week and she was able to write it as a perceived threat that he wasn't doing anything in that moment to hurt her. And she didn't have to be in panic attack mode, right? It's really, really powerful stuff, but it does take consistent application to be able to get to the point where your brain is like, oh, all right, I don't have to be doing fight or flight. I'm okay. And here's the other thing too. You can say to yourself that you are safe and you're angry right now. I am safe and I'm sad right now. I'm safe and I'm nervous right now.
Negative emotion doesn't equal unsafe. Uncomfortable doesn't equal unsafe.
Correct. Exactly.
Right. And
it doesn't require a threat response.
And I think what's great about that is it also builds people's ability to really trust themselves, right? That like, even if I don't go to 100, I could take care of myself maybe even better than what I do. And that I think is something that your body needs to learn. Like, that's why that patience and that practice is really good. At first you're like, is this shit gonna work? Is this really gonna be, you know, it's just, you're skeptical because you ain't done it before. But when you really lean into it and allow yourself to trust that you don't need to go there in order for things to be okay, then you see what happens when you don't go there. It's like magic.
Absolutely. It really is. It really is. And then the other thing that happens is you get better at all the things that you do because you're thinking more clearly. You're engaging that higher thinking power. You're using your prefrontal cortex, you know, instead of just relying on your amygdala to do everything. And I promise you're going to be less tired. That's one of the most frequent complaints that I get. I'm so tired.
And people don't even realize that tiredness in and of itself is a trauma response. That feeling sort of exhaustion, that is a trauma response. So just sort of being like, what is it about this week? Boy, I'm like, you know, it's like, that's the beginning of a signal. Well, thank you so much, because that's amazing work. As always, we're going to wrap up with some sort of takeaway from the tarot. And so this is our tarot pick of the day related to how we take care of other people when, revert. We already know how to do that. How do we take care of ourselves when we have to take care of other people? This is coming from the Afro Goddess Tarot set designed by Black artist Andrea Furtick. And so just going to shuffle these a little bit and see what we got. And so we have, I want to say, who is she this way? Yes, it's the 9 of Cups reversed. I always have to make sure between the camera reversing it and me looking at it backwards that I've got this right. Okay, and so the 9 of Cups. Cups are upside down, usually are kind of about when we start to lose stuff, right? And so the reversal of the 9 of Cups is that even though you seem to have everything, sometimes you can feel that something is missing, right? Like you get this sense that something you desire is still not there. It may be time to look within yourself for the happiness that you seek. As always, true love and compassion begins with yourself, right?
Yes, that was perfect.
Right. So, because I don't know what it is. The cards are so much better at me than coming over to take away. So this card, folks, I want you to keep it in mind, right? A compassionate person knows that to take care of other people means to set boundaries so that you can take care of yourself and come into the relationship taking care of them without resentment, irritation, upset, frustration, because those kind of things people notice. Your kids don't want you to do it to them. Your patients don't want you to do it to them. Your students don't want it from you either. If you're going to choose to show up somewhere, remember, sometimes you're the person who has to step up and make sure that you're happy before you're helping other people. Thank you, Tara. And thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank you for having me.
If people want to find you somewhere, because you're in Orlando, just so everybody.
I am in Orlando, yes.
I'm doing private practice. Please let us know how we can find you.
Sure. So I currently work for Lake Nona Behavioral Health Services. And so LN Behavioral Health is our website, or you can Google us, Lake Nona Behavioral Health Services. You can find me on LinkedIn. And, LinkedIn is where I always post, like if I'm going to be doing any kind of talks like this or CEU presentations or anything like that. If you want to email me, if that's easier, I'm Natasha at LN, like Lake Nona, behavioralhealth.com. And if you go to the website, you can just email me straight from there because it's a pretty long website. If you are interested in any of this stuff, the guy that I learned all this stuff from is Dr. Eric Gentry, and he is just absolutely outstanding. He's got his doctorate, his whole field of research, and he actually has this series on YouTube that's free. It's called the Forward Facing Institute. And if you really want to learn more about professional resilience, highly, highly worth the watch. That's out there as a resource that he just put out there for people to have, because his goal is that people are doing this work in relaxed bodies so that we're not traumatizing ourselves and not traumatizing the people that we're working with.
Okay, so I just put that
Gentry. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And so I hope everybody who needs help can find themselves a certified compassion fatigue professional in their area. If you're in Orlando, hopefully you can find Natasha in your area. I don't even know if you've got space for clients. She might be full during the pandemic.
I'm booked a couple of weeks out, but I am still taking clients.
But you still got space for you guys. Okay, yes. So thank you so much. And we will see you next time at a special time on Saturday next week. We are going to be doing a special episode with an intuitive who's going to answer a couple of people's questions live on People Always Ask finale next week. Hopefully everybody got something great out of this. I'm so happy that you came on. I got something great out of it too. I'm making my pelvic square.
Yes.
Right now. Anyway.
Relax into your body. I promise. As I tell my clients, go forth in a relaxed body.
Yes. And so thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch you on Saturday for the season finale of People Always Ask. Good night.
Just
bye. Thanks,
get up or get out or get off. And I'll hit you when I get down and get in and get on. Just call me when you get up or get out or get off. And I'll hit you when I get down and get in and get on. Baby, you could just call me when you get up or get out or get off. And I'll hit you when I get down and get in and get on.